I'm Ujani Basalko, and this is EBG in the Know. Welcome to my talk show series. This is the second episode, and I'm very excited to have with me Jenna Bond. Jenna is a friend of mine. She's a screenwriter. She's been a copywriter, a writer of speeches, a writer of correspondence, a writer of all sorts of things, and she's Harlem based, has focused a lot of her life and existence and world in Harlem and the art of Harlem and the stage of Harlem, and is very involved in the food world of Harlem. She's a graduate, am I, of Wellesley College. I'm having her on the show today because I wanted to talk about um, the strikes going on in Hollywood, and because Jenna specifically has been involved in screenwriting, most recently had some success with her show Run the World, which was on Starz, and she also did some work on a documentary, I believe, for the Smithsonian. So Jenna, if you could, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed your first podcast
Thanks.
episode.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to keep the momentum going with you, and I was struck by the craziness happening in Hollywood, and so many of the people that I follow as artists and writers have participated, as I believe you have, in the Writers Guild of America and uh Am
Screen Actors Guild.
AMPTP, AMPTP strike. And so I wanted you to kind of, if you don't mind, walk us through. I know that you're limited in some of the things that you can talk about, but walk us through that, what's going on with that strike as best you can. And also, and then we'll maybe tie it in because I'm also very aware of the fact that SAG is also on strike with AMPTP. So AMPTP, which is the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. Sorry, that's not that's AFTRA.
That's AFTRA.
That's AFTRA. So SAG and
SAG
AFTRA,
AFTRA
yeah, SAG AFTRA together are in strike
Yes, I don't know what
against,
AMTP is, but
yes,
it's the biggest production company,
Alliance
bigger
for
studios.
Motion
So
Picture and
it,
Television.
it
Yeah, sorry.
picture
Alliance for
producers. Yeah,
Television
no,
Motion.
they're so it's like David Zaslav, who now owns HBO and Discovery, and Ted Sarantos. I feel like keep forgetting the actual founder and CEO's name. And then also, just is that like Disney did a great job making me fall in love with the idea of their CEOs when Michael Eisner was around, because he would always introduce the Sunday movie with Mickey, but Bob Iger, and they were really like these barons, oil barons, who get to decide who set the price of work in Hollywood, in
Right.
America. But basically, I want to go back a little bit because I think I was telling my friend who was an actor that the thing that my mind's constantly obsessed with the idea of late night shows. It just we watch this one thing that hasn't evolved since 1960 every night in order to sell a show. And so intelligent actors, intelligent writers go on to late night show and make it sound like they don't work. And then every 3 years of a contract, and the idea and makes it sound like the work's all glamorous, everybody's rich and having a great time. But the true history of Hollywood is that without unionization, there was no workers' rights. The funny thing is, prior to becoming a writer, I worked at the Writers Guild, which I think is a blessing, because I know that a lot of times when your career happens, everything's all at once, and you're in a union, but you don't really know why. And it was a very different office. I think I'm a moderate, and I feel like a lot of people had Bernie Sanders posters all over the office, like a very, very socialist. It was a great education because I had never worked around people who were socially centered. But the history of the Writers Guild is that people like Jack Warner wouldn't necessarily give you the credit for your work. And so if you wrote most of it, but he had a girlfriend or he had a best friend, you weren't guaranteed that your work was credited. And it started off as the Screenwriters Guild, and really it became a constant that the idea of it's funny that someone talking about the definition of a word. So one conversation I was in is like priority by definition should be singular. Negotiation by definition requires for someone to respond. And so definitively unions will set the least creative professional should make, and your agent or your manager negotiates above the least. So when you're thinking about A-list celebrities, you're thinking about what agents earn for people. The guild makes sure that you have a standard of living. And so that the strike that like is the reason I'm on strike was in 1960. And those writers gave up a lot of residuals, a lot of benefits so that I could have a pension and residuals. And I think that even set up, I think it was the first time there were film residuals within 1960 following that strike, but it was a 6-month strike. And to this day, I have health care. And once I hit 5 credits, I'll have a pension. And just that idea of a middle class and is the conversation we're having. I think that there are people who are famous now who aren't thinking about the fact that maybe their kids may not have a career if there's no limits on AI, because the industry is set to minimize the expense on workers. So where we're talking, if I was in conversation with someone on the picket line today, we had a Latin picket outside of Warner Discovery earlier today, and Rosie Perez was there, and the guy from Most of My So-Called Life. But if Warren, if David Zaslav and Ted Sarantos or also Bob Iger decide to take a Warren Buffett year where they only pay themselves $1, all of what we're asking for and some would be covered in terms of finances. But and I also want to also flag that in 1973, the residuals on VCRs or VHS, that was what they're striking for. No one had VHS until like the 80s. And I think like usually like the one I remember when I was a member, I thought that Mad Men was ruined by the strike, but Mad Men followed the strike, so I didn't even hear it right. But basically that was, Netflix was saying, oh, we're just DVDs. We're never going to have streaming. There's no reason someone working for Netflix should make the same amount someone should working on an HBO show. And the first show is, gosh, what was that show? The political show was the first show. And that show would have been an HBO show, but also those writers were able to, have one job for the year, and have a standard of living. But a lot of times it's about, the unions presenting what should be the least for workers. About the writer's room, talking about AI, and we're talking about streaming residuals, which you actually don't get if your show's on streaming. As a writer, you don't get residuals currently. The conversation about the writer's room, and that's like I referenced the late night shows where you just like, oh, we're just taking it, we're having fun. If you're talking about inclusion in the industry, what you're even seeing right now when you're using Chat GPT, if you put in facts that are not predominantly white American and specifically white American male, the actual breadth of content is significantly reduced. So there's a way in which we're treating it. I think every writer is pro using tools that make part of writing more like a calculator, which a healthy AI system would be. And this is where we overlap with SAG. The AMPTP wants no limits and wants to casually consider it from year to year. And I was talking with someone recently, and I feel we just continually make entertainment seem fun, where it is a business. It's the least regulated business. You do hours and months of work for free as a writer in order to get hired. And so like even if someone pays you the golden ticket dollar for your writing, sometimes it reflects a larger amount of hourly work, forward and backward. And so thinking about what it means to have a standard of living, what it means to really develop a craft. A lot of people love to say like, you're creative, and a lot, it's not really creative. If you look at what we're asking for, it's less than 2% of television revenue. And if you Google how much money's made out of television, I was saying to someone, if we were athletes, we would be going to this, we would see this as like, by the time you're sitting for the draft, your financial worth. And I
Right.
think that a lot of times as filmmakers, you feel lucky, like as an actor, like, you're told you're cute, or if you're writing, you're told you're funny, you're good at telling stories, you're fun. It's not like a craft conversation where I think of writing more like the old ladies that make dresses in Italy. And there are very few of them left. But you can't learn how to do couture unless you sit next to old lady or old man who's like the best at it. Writing is the same thing. You're cutting very specifically. You're doing a 3 act structure. Most of the time, there are some other ones, but you're selling to an audience, so you're not just telling a great story. By the time someone meets with you, they're thinking about their subscriptions going up. They're thinking about marketing a certain concept or a certain. Now people sell clothes out of TV shows. So you're really being hired as part of a business. Your script is a business plan. It's just written text only. The script gets the director hired. Everyone from the director to like the makeup crew are based on that script, so it sets a budget. It sends economies to different parts of the country. I think now Atlanta is now a hub that wouldn't have been prior to a lot of advancement. But television writers, I wish I knew the story correctly, but even Mary Tyler Moore, when she set up MTM Productions, did it as an act of solidarity so that writers would get a standard of living that studios were trying to move away from. But the conversation happens before you can visualize why the conversation's happening. And as a person of color, as someone who's been raised by organizers, the AI of it is very important because I think both the AI and the writer's room, because like the writer's room thing is there are aspects of the writing job that happen after you finish writing. So when you're on set, if the casting changes or if there's something like they're real time, but also you have to be on set to understand how writing works. And they're suggesting like that's the internship or that's volunteering. And there's a way in which you can frame the conversation that puts writers versus directors or writers versus actors. But I think everybody's equally invested in representation, great skills, allowing future generations to have a great skill set, and then also just not allowing what we consider to be glamorous to be what imprisons us in a certain way. Just because there's a way in which we're all rooting for people who have nothing to do with our daily lives. So like, why shouldn't Ted Sarandos, and like Ted Sarandos didn't really build the current Netflix, like the showrunners, like Bo Willimon or my friends like obsessively watching Orange is the New Black. Like those 2 shows gave Netflix another thing. And even now, reality show stars are starting to think about like, why am I working for free, or why am I working for. Someone told me that like a contestant on this new Bachelorette was offered $1,000 as like a per month for a
Right.
DM. Like we'll give you free food. And I'm like, what adult person should live off $1,000 a month and not work and not call like it's like this luck idea, and how we just use glamour to distract us from value and worth is something that we really have to think about this moment.
Well, I think you touched on something that I have very much.
I'm so chatty.
No problem. No, I think you touched on something that I've my internet's coming in and out, but bear with me. Um, the the um the idea that you got me. Okay. The idea that the
Mhm.
writers are somehow um on a pathway to something greater, that they're the interns of Hollywood, or that their hope is to you know, advance to a point where they would somehow then be, you know, in front of the camera as opposed to in the writer's room writing the story that the actors are going to be portraying. I feel very much that that's been something that is a misconception. You're absolutely right that that as with any skill, such as acting, writing can very much be learned, and it needs to be treated as the skill it is, rather than something that is almost, you know, I don't know, junior to anything else, for lack of a better phrase. It's like the blue collar worker of, you know, of of
But
entertainment.
it's yeah, but it's
And
the Steve Jobs of entertainment. That's the thing that's like ironic. Like we're talking, if someone created, like usually the person who creates it, and we're like the head of advertising, is telling the person who's in charge of advertising, telling the actual creator like what to do. And I think that the structurally, like, just being clear that like it is creative, but it also is like a formula. You know, like you're part of a business.
correct,
Yeah.
right. It's a skill, and it's a specific talent. And people do get educated to do it, to learn to do it well. Um, and then there are of course those people that don't get educated to do it well, and don't learn how to do it well, and think that they can do it well. I mean, that, as with a lot of things. But
Yeah.
in terms of AI, my understanding is that the part of the contract, um, on both in both strikes, part of the contract is obviously, as you mentioned, to limit the use of AI. Okay. So, and you mentioned Chat GPT. The word limit is interesting to me. Does that mean Chat GPT or the likes have been used
Um.
up until this point?
No, no, no. So like they like generally like I think there's a way in which it's related to rights. So technically, we've in order for us to use social media, we've given away a lot of content. So everything we post to Instagram, Facebook, is property of those companies. Um, and if I were to write something and put it on a platform, do I give up my right to my voice
Got
if
it.
I cause it? And so, do you get Jenna for like this is the last check I get the last check I get because it can scramble it up. But also just the different elements of it. So does AI get to make a remake of my movie? And like, do I get like, or you know, like, or like, can there's just ways in which I think Christine Bateman's kind of had a lot of traction on in social media about having a conversation about what's being taken. I know there's I think Sarah Silverman's dealing with a copyright issue related to
Yeah.
AI, but also if it if I have a script and someone trains AI using my script, but
Mm-hmm.
AI comes up with the original script, do I
Mm-hmm.
own the script that AI did? So it's not about using it as a tool. I've tried it in terms of like structure, like coming up with beats, um,
Uh-huh.
and
Did
I
you
think it
find it
understands.
useful?
Yeah, I think it helps start thoughts.
Yes.
And it's funny. I had a fiery friend that like she loves to like say things she doesn't mean just to be edgy, but she was like, well, people, both Democrats and Republicans, have let people get so dumb that a show written by AI may not phase most of America. And I was like, I can't deny that, but the nuances of that the app couldn't do. So like it could say, like I gave it like what she did and what she wanted, and it was able to say like, her first night on the stage, she has a chance at a career and also a chance at love. And then it made up a three act for the love and a three act for the career. But the lead character is black. So like who is a historical figure? And he couldn't find anything more than what I could get from Wikipedia. So
Right.
like as a person of color, if I were to put in a different figure of same size and they were white, it would probably give me a very good three-tier outline. But I think that writing comes in the nuance and not just the literal part of like beginning, middle, and end. So I don't think that it gives like today at the Latin strikes, I was like, it's not gonna know the difference between Dominican and Puerto Rican. It's not gonna know the difference between a Cuban and a Mexican.
I
It's not
mean,
gonna
I think
like
the
we're getting out of
concern
regionalism, but
is that it one day will, right? I mean,
no one's programming it for that. So like, no, not necessarily. One day someone will be like, "Oh, Perry Tubman was white," and I'll be like, "But like, it's not the people are programming it. We don't talk about the exclusion that happens in Silicon Valley, but it's not necessarily not just like it's only one group of people that program it, but there are people, a lot of people who are biased against other groups are writing it. So like, only one group's history is being categorized into AI, but not setting limitations on it also means like to what extent, like, is it going to be used to say like, okay, you're going to take my story, but you're going to have an AI write out, or I have to write out an AI story, but I don't get paid for the things that like if AI creating story doesn't count as story credit, like there's no way, like for instance, there's so many tiers of like there's a story by credit versus a screenplay credit versus a teleplay by credit. And so which credits turn into residuals turns into pension and healthcare. So is it about AI or is it about not having to pay writers through AI?
got it.
Because even with the amount of years we've had with streaming, like the fact there's no residuals on anything that you watched on Netflix for the people who created it, and someone you're watching a show that costs you $15 a month, to watch, but the person who wrote it is driving an Uber. Um, Even though there's enough of the revenue that if you gave all writers, and I'm saying like people who write Jason Bourne and write Marvel movies and write the black shows that nobody watches unless you're black, and the Asian shows unless like all those people combined are only asking film and television for less than 2% of TV revenue alone, not film revenue. So when you have like long conversations about 1%, which as a person of color I'm used to, people have been like, "Are you taking my one spot?" Like, there's like, why is the one spot too much? So why is it that the person who creates story that because I've had that experience of almost getting on a show, but the studio doesn't want to pay for more than four writers, but the four writers on it are super famous, and so they've taken up all the budget, and so like it just becomes harder to start your career. I've been on shows, I've been up for shows that like get delayed to reduce the budget. So like it's not a it's also such a wild west of it's funny because like there's no HR when you're in film or
Right.
entertainment. Like there's no water cooler where you meet people all the time. Like you're in it alone, and they keep the data on the numbers locked, so you can't even argue what your real value is. So like there are numbers that prove the power of the writer and the reach of the writer. Even like the top shows in terms of ads are not necessarily the shows that pay people the most
Right.
for what you can see when you're looking at Nielsen ratings. So there's a way in which we confuse the idea of value and worth just by separating people from what their work actually generated.
So, I'm actually running out of time on my Zoom meeting and I didn't realize that, but I wanted to ask, um, I just read that there's this 90-day termination clause for force majeure, like that the big studio could and can fire the writers after 90 days without of striking. and it's been more than 90 days of striking. Um, there's a termination clause. I mean, I don't think, given the press and all the support that this strike, these two strikes have garnered, I don't think the big studios would be wise to fire writers using that clause. But is this a concern that you have or that you've spoken with other writers about? Is that something people are talking about?
Um, I haven't, but it does hit on. I think one thing that people are not thinking about. I don't think I know if many shows are even purchased as of January this year. But these mergers didn't work out the way that I feel like a significant lapse in journalism. And it's hard when you're in entertainment because Variety is not like non-biased entertainment news. It's basically like a PR book at this point in time. But even with the New York Times or LA Times, it'd be nice if a larger outlet looked at the financial models that are not working. And so by not buying shows even at the start of this year and looking at ways to cut costs, their fiscal years are ending soon. And I think there's a way in which this has been used and been pushed to a strike by AMTP because writers don't want to strike. Most writers, and like even with the SAG-AFTRA, most of the members are not living great. And to get a job is a huge deal and a huge save when it comes through. But the companies themselves are in the red, and I do feel in many ways the strike was used to reduce the red for these major companies. Also owning it, I think Disney ABC was good, but Disney, ABC, Fox, Hulu, um, is like may not be a great no.
Yeah, it's affecting a lot of shows and a lot of movies forthcoming, a lot of Avengers and awards
No,
programs
but I
and
think it's not. I'm saying like they didn't have the. But
go
I'm
ahead.
saying I don't think they intended to negotiate. Like I feel as though no one's looking at whether revenue was at the start of 23, even what their Q4 revenue was in 22. Because I feel like there's a business plan, and I as someone who's graduated from business school, and I don't usually talk about business school, but like labor is used to make millionaires. It's not used to create great work. And I think that we have to ask how many people are billionaires or multi-million people versus creating a product that created a lot of revenue.
That makes sense. I have one last question, and then unfortunately we're actually out of time on this. But well, and I know this is a complex question, but what is considered fair? I mean, if can the actors argue that they're contributing regularly to content just in the acting of the words that you've written and thus deserve just such a vast percentage more?
Well, I don't like most like the average. I think they were saying like you have to earn 27,000 a year as an actor to get healthcare, and most of them don't afford it. But when you're part of a union, you're doing things for the masses, not for the self. And so you're lifting for people who aren't born yet. You're lifting for people who are the majority of your organization. And if they can, saying like someone can scan at this point in time, if without any limits, they can scan your IG and figure out how to use you without ever paying you. I like there's no need to live like a blues singer from the 1920s in this era of wealth. So like I think that's like the I love Muddy Waters, but I'm not trying to live like Muddy. So
Let's take a brief break and we'll start back up again. Welcome back. Sorry for that brief interruption. I'm as as you know, I'm speaking with Jenna Bond, and we're talking about the strike between the Writers Guild of America and the American Motion Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers.
Picture.
And that's AMPTP. AMPTP.
AMPTP.
Yes, AMPTP.
It's like a rap group or like the
Exactly. And AMPTP is
but I want to say that this
also fighting. Well, I know that's not the right word, but is also
no, they
in
are they are fighting us. They are.
so AMPTP is also fighting or in debate, in contract, in discussion with the SAG,
The union's on strike and
after.
the producers
Yes.
are not responding.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
And I want to say that this is like,
go ahead.
they weren't expecting this level of solidarity between the unions because PGA, the Producers Guild of America, PGA, they're like the union of producers, although the producers don't have a WGA East, WGA West, separated. They were incorporated separately in 1954, I believe. But IATSE, we're all unified on these issues, and it's never. I think this is one of the largest cross union actions that have happened in time. Because even '07 is gray in my mind. I don't think there was this much activity. Today is day 109 as we're speaking. And I was, I've been on pick and line with like so many high profile people from like, gosh, I'm such a bad name recaller, but he's there all the time. He created Homicide. He's on pick and line every day, I think. We've seen David Simon, who created The Wire, out there. Today was Rosie Perez and Susan Sarandon and the homie from My Coco Life. I forget his name, but he's so lovely. He was on the Star Trek shows. But like, you're not out there alone, and it's not like the weird kids. I think as a television writer, and I've become weirder as I focus more on television writers. Definitely like the nerd table of the entertainment industry cafeteria. Not quite Glee Club.
That's okay.
But
All nerds allowed here.
Everybody's there, and SAG-AFTRA has been helping the Writers Guild since day one of our strike. I don't think you could hear the "No Justice, No Peace" a chant of the picket line without SAG-AFTRA. But
and
it's really important.
They've only been on strike since July, I believe, mid-July.
Yeah, mid-July. Their contract expired. Yeah, the day after. If no one replies by the day that your contract expires, that's how you end up on strike. So like, I was working on a project, and May 1st happened, and then May 2nd there was no contract. So it's a work stoppage that isn't the best, but like, you stand in solidarity. And I feel like people forget, like, Martin Luther King was a union organizer when he was murdered. He was organizing the garbage workers. And so like, there's something very provocative. Although it's weird because like, we're white collar, where a lot of other unions are blue collar.
Yep.
But the conversation about value and the right to a good life happens at the union level. So much. Yeah, I think we get Fox News from the decimation of unions. That's how powerful the influence of union life is. And so just thinking about, what does it mean to have access to retirement, that 65 would mean something to you, that you have weekends that you don't have to support Amazon because you don't get to sleep more than 4 hours versus you need a like, you're just using convenience. Like, so much of our lives are put towards not questioning our worth. I remember when I was laid off, I felt so bad. And so it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I stopped feeling bad about it. My friend who was socialist, he was like, you used to be mad at the company, and now they've convinced you that something's wrong with you. And we live in the state where we give off infatuation to this distant entity that doesn't serve us. It just fuels our imagination or gives us a story, which is funny because I'm a storyteller, but there's a way in which stories should stop. And that to earn a living. What if you spend all this money on your education, if your rent costs this much, if you have to commute to do your job, if the numbers that of what you create is an economy, someone else, so the people that we're on strike because of, they're employing people who are guaranteed weekends, parental leave, they're guaranteed vacation, they're when you write a show, you're really like, I think, I don't even know, like it's like $10,000 a day that are being spent when you see these shows being made. You know, like everybody's getting a salary, and it comes from the script, and
is it
it's a
primarily
blueprint. It's an
the
ephemeral short-term business.
executives?
Ideally, the business will run for 5 years.
Is it
It's the
primarily?
CEO level. I mean,
Yeah, right,
it's the CEO
right.
level, but the people in the middle, I think even executives may not be well educated because they're like those writers are striking. Versus really looking at like if you look at the revenue and you look at the writers guild says the least the writer should make. Like based on this, like if we were talking about coding, like coders make a great salary. I like a baby coder makes a great salary. A baby television writer, in the last contract, it's about I guess it's about 5,000 a week. Um, but then you're also a person slash company, so you give away 20% taxes. So it's just like, what do you have to earn so that at the end of a year you can say you made $60,000? And that's the bottom amount.
Right.
That's but also so AI to duplicate scripts to get to the end. And because Netflix loves putting on shows that people don't actually watch, they like listen to while they're doing their laundry. Are they gonna like somehow dupe everyone out of thinking that people are worth getting a salary, like a living wage? Not worrying about what George Clooney makes, you know, or
Right.
what even what a Dick Wolf is making on every watching it, a woman is watching it. I've been when I was on staff at the guild, I walked into a room and it was like 200 people. And a woman walks over, she's like, "Oh, another woman in a room in the 2000s. 200 people in a room in the 2000s. A woman sees me. We're also it's a hard conversation to have publicly because I also in the industries where the country was professionally in terms of inclusion. Like the diversity is closer to 1960s and so these conversations are also about like, do they not want big rooms because the diversity of people who are getting in the rooms? Like now that there are other kinds of representation that's happening, why can't this new generation, as a person of color, as a black woman, you know, because it's not just about me bodaciously saying like I'm great, but Norman Lear got to like shadow people, got to like get so many episodes, like
Yeah.
just that access to being excellent is shifting.
So so then it sounds like you have that that you're optimistic about the direction, unless I just misinterpreted what you just said. And by the way, I apologize for all the glitches that
I'm
we have.
hyped up, but I'm hyped up. No,
Say
I'm
that again.
hyped up because um there's just so many. Oh, I'm hyped. I'm definitely hyped up. Today it was just the Latin strike,
Yeah,
and there's like a few hundred people out there. Like we were the entirety of 19th Street between Broadway and Park Avenue South.
right.
And the music was playing, and the crowd was just. And I think that we've made some people embarrassed that didn't think that they would be embarrassed. Because like I was saying with the late night shows, they parade people around and be like, "It was fun making the show, and I'm just a silly actor. I'm a silly writer." And I think that people will want their late night shows back, but I think that we have to like have conversations about entertainment work that shows that we actually are smart and we're thinking and we have a point of view and we are not replaceable by robots.
Right. Well, I know that
But
for sure.
yeah, I think I just worry. I worry because I'm like people aren't smart or curious anymore.
Yeah.
I believe that I'm better than Rosie,
Yeah.
the maid from the Jetsons. Yeah.
Yes.
But I may not be better than Rosie Perez. Yeah.
No, I mean, yes, we should clarify that since you were with her today. But no confusion with Rosie Perez. She's very good. She's very good. But I don't know that she could.
Very
Has she written scripts?
good.
Great actress. Has she written scripts?
When she was on the podium, she's
I
a,
love. I
a
love.
writer and actor. So
Yeah, I loved her in the movie. Um.
do the right thing.
Oh well. Oh yeah, but no. Since then, I love. Yeah, I loved her in Do the Right Thing, but I loved her in. There's one where she played a survivor of a plane
She was a
crash.
flight attendant, but I forgot.
And then she played the girlfriend of, oh my gosh, why is my brain she's really had some shining moments as an actress where she deserved awards. There was this movie where she's the girlfriend of this hermit-like man who's dying. Oh my gosh, and that's played by, oh, he lives in this little tiny apartment and she's a waitress and and he's not disclosing that he's dying. But they end up having this very loving relationship and she's just brilliant in it. Um,
Was it a Nicolas Cage movie?
no, gosh, I'm gonna lose my mind now. Oh, she's so good in that movie. And again, she's I'm gonna find my phone here. This okay for my for my viewers, this is really important. Not, but I don't care. Rosie Perez. Um,
It wasn't with Nicolas Cage.
Not that one. Not It Could Happen to, I don't think not that. No, not It Could Happen to You. No. Untamed Heart. Untamed Heart. That is a movie
Oh,
that is that didn't get enough critical acclaim. For it was actually really good. So she's actually not the girlfriend. Marissa Tomei is the girlfriend, and Christian Slater is the main character. Um, and he has a heart issue, and Rosie Perez is the friend of Marissa Tomei, and Rosie Perez is so great in that. Um, and then there's another movie she's in where she plays the survivor of a plane crash, and both of those movies are she's really really excellent in.
hmm.
Apologies for the brief Rosie Perez interlude,
Interesting.
but it's
Yeah, it was great. It was a great
no,
ode to
it's
Rosie
hard.
Perez.
No, it's heartening that she's participating in the strike, and that so many people have you know rallied and or my father is a long time union member from having been in the printing industry for years, and So I'm a big fan of unions, and I get it. Like, I mean, it's a culture and a community in and of itself, and I think it's so important to have representation, where otherwise you have, you know, not just underrepresentation or no representation, but misunderstanding and lack of awareness. Um, so I really think that's crucial.
Mhm.
And and as a writer, you know, I certainly stand with you, and I'm I'm sorry that you're having to fight where really you shouldn't have to fight. These things um should just be given, right? They should be there. And as you say,
Yeah,
as part of a good business plan, they would be.
but I mean, I believe that we have to think about how business operates, because I think that strike isn't just about entertainment. I think it's about everyone in America. This was a lot of people who with a high school degree or a normal college degree. Um, like I feel like if you don't get into the elite institutions, you're gonna be locked out of a lot of opportunities going forward. And just what is the right of businesses to protect the lives of people who build their companies. Um, because I think we're rooting for companies and rooting against ourselves in ways that we've never done before. And would the civil rights movement be worried about the government if it were around today, or would they be worried about business? Because I think that without having to pay taxes, there's a lot being removed from the public, just by the way we think. Like, we've lost Barney's from the way businesses operate. We've lost Dean and DeLuca, because we think that there's no limits. And I'm like, those are great institutions that are gone from just incredulous entertainment. But I think that we need to require what is invested into future generations from these companies. And I also want to encourage people to like support I think I was trying to Google this entertainment community fund, to support people who are strongly affected, from support staff.
Is there a
I've benefited from Humanitas has provided groceries for writers, which has been very helpful. To think about the organizations you can support, because if you're paying $14.99 to Netflix a month, maybe just give $14.99 to the Entertainment Community Fund.
So since we've had so many technical difficulties in this episode, um, and part of what you just said, I think you were frozen. What I'd like for you to do is just, can you say those things again? And then
Sure.
yeah, that would, and then I'll put it in the description of today's show as well. So I
Yes,
think,
there's the
yeah,
Entertainment
yeah, go ahead.
Community Fund, the Entertainment Community Fund, and then there's an organization called Humanitas, which is an organization that honors film and television writers, but they are giving groceries for writers, and there's a way on the site to support that effort.
That's Humanitas, correct? Humanitas.
Yeah, ITAS. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
Humanitas. It's www.humanitasprize.org.
Okay. Um, if you would
But
send me,
how to support groceries for
yeah,
writers.
I will include that information in the description of today's episode. And well, I just really appreciate you being on with me. I'm sorry about the lag on the internet and some other technical difficulties we had, but thank you for being my my second guest on EBG in the Know. I'm
Me and Barney Frank.
yeah, you and Barney Frank, and I hope that, you'll get me some subscribers from your big fan club, because you have a huge fan club. All I want is for Marcus Samuelsson to subscribe to my show, and then we're good.
Okay.
And if he does, I promise to have you on
I'll see
again.
if I can put him to like a post.
Yeah, maybe you can get him to come on and we could talk about what's
Okay, I
going
like that.
on
Maybe we can get him on.
yeah, in the food industry. I would love.
He's about he's very engaged in supporting restaurants and the shift
I
that
know.
COVID has put on the
I
restaurant industry
know.
in terms of service staff,
I've paid attention to that.
and
Him
also
and
food. He's into food, like eating local and stuff like that. So like
oh,
sustainability. Yeah. But I
I'm
also want to
well
say
aware.
I love about you. Oh, okay, but I love you, and I think that you are wonderful. Funny because Susan Sarandon was there today, and I feel like you give me Susan Sarandon vibes. Like I just remember being like, it's such a young person thing to think. Like I was a child, and I was like, when I'm 70, I want to look like her. And I'm sure she was like 40 when I was looking at her. But like she does, like, you're a good broad. Like you can drink and talk and change a chauvinist mind about some bitches. And I feel like you're wonderful and everything. It's great to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And
You are yeah,
I
yeah,
wish
you
there
and
hadn't
Susan
been so
Sarandon
many glitches
play
when you were
play
saying
you. We'll put her.
it.
We'll make
Basically, almost everything you
the
said was,
compliment.
yeah, the main compliments that you said probably won't even be heard because the computer's glitching so much. So I'll definitely have to have you back on in an episode where you just compliment me, and that's all that happens.
To compliment you.
All right. Well,
I will do that for you. I'll just
yes. Thank you
20
so
minutes.
much. I really appreciate you. Good luck with your work, and much love, and we'll talk soon.
I appreciate you. I love you. This is a great podcast. Thanks for having me on.
Take care.